Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. Wait. Is it? No, Wednesday. Sorry.
That's a big time error there, Mike.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah.
So I'm losing the race to act like 35,000 to 1. Okay.
No, it's not that close.
We have a few things to discuss. Some breaking news that just happened a few minutes ago. We'll discuss in a few minutes. But as always, we have the pre-show. Russ will start us off.
Far be it for me to defend somebody on the Buffalo Bills because I despise the Buffalo Bills. But I do think Josh Allen's a good quarterback. And the fact that ESPN had him ranked 9th in the NFL makes no sense to me. They had Russell Wilson ahead of him. I think Russell Wilson was ahead of him 2 years ago. I don't think he's ahead of him now. It's interesting to me that everybody wants to say, the Bills are good, and they are. And look, I think New England now will give them a run for the division.
Yeah,
I do. But I think they still think it's all defense. And it's really not. They're a well-rounded team, but Josh Allen's a very good quarterback, and for whatever reason, he just doesn't get any credit.
Well, their defense wasn't very good last year. They rode on their offense, and I think the defense will be better this year.
Yeah.
And maybe their offense will take a little bit of a step back because they were so fantastic last year. But yeah, I mean, I saw one poll. He was 10th in the NFL. He was like third. The only quarterbacks he was behind were Super Bowl champions. He was behind Mahomes, Brady, and Rodgers. And that I get because they've won championships and Allen hasn't. But Kev, I'm always hesitant to go there when it comes to like, okay, this player is a superstar because I'm waiting sort of for, the other shoe to fall. And then all of a sudden he takes a big step back. But unless everything's wrong, he's a superstar.
Yeah, especially in football, sometimes you're reluctant to do it because injuries play such a huge role in that sport, even bigger than the other sports. So I agree with you on that, but I agree, superstar for sure. I want to circle back just a minute though. The phrase "despise the Bills." Now, normally this issue is me and Jello about this, but is this for humans' rights violations or?
No, he's a Jets fan.
No, I'm a Jets fan, and
so you hate a team just based on the idea, even though the team changes from year to year, ownership changes, and everything else.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I have no love for them.
Russ was traumatized.
That's different than despising them. Do you have no love for them, or you despise them?
No, I despise them and the Patriots. I have no love for the Dolphins.
Russ was traumatized in his youth because he was at the Bills-Jets playoff game when Richard Todd got intercepted by Bill Simpson. He's lived through Boomer Esiason getting poleaxed into the turf by Bruce Smith. So I get it.
I get individual players. I had a healthy dose of dislike for Bobby Clark when he played because of the way he played.
Me too.
And all that. But a team, a team in 72 is different than the team in 73, which is different than the team in 79. I can't work up. I
hate the uniforms. I hate the logos. I hate all of it.
I do get Russ in terms of hatred.
Well, of course you do. Yeah.
Right. because as a former Maple Leaf fan, and I'm sure many of the people in Southern Ontario, and this is exacerbated by the playoffs this year, they hate the Montreal Canadiens because the Montreal Canadiens won all those Stanley Cups. And the Leafs haven't won since 1967. Buffalo fans hate the Miami Dolphins, going back to the fact that the entire decade of the 70s.
You have to be pretty old.
I'm friendly with
in the truest sense of the words, I don't think people really hate them. They really just like what happened during that period.
I mean, to hate the Montreal Canadiens, you have to be pretty old as a Leafs fan. I mean, that was 1993. So you figure you had to be at least 10 years old in 1983. So. Mm-hmm. 1993, so they were born in 83. So now you're looking at somebody who's in their 30s. I mean, so it's a complete.
I do want to say this doesn't extend to the fans though, because I'm friendly with Bills fans. I'm friendly with Mike. Yeah. It really just has to do with the team franchise and the uniforms, and I hate it all.
No,
I just think that it's the word we use. I don't feel like I always talk to people about, especially older people, about what they saw when they were a kid and their impressions and all that. And when you get right down to it, when I talk to them, they have fond memories of those games. They just use the word hate because it sounds kind of sports.
Oh, no, I have no fond memories. No.
How about this though? This angle on this. This angle on this though is kind of. I've always thought about this. So I used to actually grew up hating the Devils and Rangers because I was a Flyers fan, and the Islanders. But then once you work in the sport, it changed drastically for me. Like it became like I was a huge Montreal Canadiens fan growing up as a kid, yet dealing with the Canadiens organization as a professional has not been the most fun in the world. So it's like that sort of shifted my focus a little bit there, where dealing with the Islanders has always been great. The Devils have been on and off at times, and the Rangers have been tough. So, but I have found that I'm no longer like a fan of teams as much as I am of just individual players. I meet, certain players I meet that are just such great people that you end up following them around and like in your head, like rooting for them as you watch the games. Like
there could be really good people on the Bills, but I just hate everything else.
Yeah, you don't cover them. You know what I mean? So I'm just
saying. I just want to make that clear. It's not going to change.
Just a couple.
I don't hate Josh Allen. I think he's a good quarterback. That's how it started.
Just a couple quick things attached to Josh Allen, because when Russ and I were talking about this yesterday, I brought up the fact, and it was advertised heavily in the Buffalo area, that Josh Allen is doing a commercial for Buffalo Wild Wings. And in Buffalo, the fact that he's doing a commercial for a national chain that's associated with chicken wings, that's not like a local Buffalo thing. I mean, it irked a lot.
Oh man!
Oh, God.
Mike,
did it irk a lot of people, or did it irk you, Mike?
No, I don't.
I am irked, young man.
Russ can attest to this. We've gone to Buffalo Wild Wings locations, so I'm not. It's not like I'm boycotting them. Like it's not like he did a commercial for the Anchor Bar, because then I would have a problem.
Randy, how old are you?
By the way, I had the creepiest experience at a Buffalo Wild Wings. So this was, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, where I was down visiting a relative who was ill, and I was with my cousin, and we went into Buffalo Wild Wings on like a Monday, and we made our order, we watched a game, and then we were there an entire week, and the following week we went in and we sat down, and the same waitress came over, and she said, "You'll have this, this, and that, and you'll have this, this, and that." And I said, "What?" And because, well, that's what you ordered last time. I said, "That was a week ago. We were in Indiana. I don't live in Indiana." And I think it's one of the creepiest
they
restaurant experiences. She had exactly what we ordered down, including our beers and our.
Here's the other. Here's the other pet peeve, and I know my buddy NL King on Twitter will chastise me for having a fast food day. But again, yesterday was my fast food day.
And it's Tuesday, yeah.
It's Tuesday, yeah. We know that now.
I ordered chicken fingers from a location, an unbeknownst restaurant downtown, and I said, okay, I'll have a plain with hot sauce on the side. And they asked, in Buffalo, it's a cardinal sin to ask for ranch dressing with chicken wings or chicken fingers, but they offered is a blue cheese or ranch. And I said, of course, blue cheese. So I wait 25 minutes. I get the order. I don't check it like Russ chastises me for doing every time. And I drive home all the way in the suburbs, and I open it up, and gee, they forgot not the ranch, not the blue cheese, but both. They forgot both. And they forgot the hot sauce. I forgot to. So they gave me plain chicken fingers with French fries that were soaked in grease because they put the chicken fingers on top of the French fries and nothing to dunk them in. That was great.
Hello, world. You've been watching the Mike Augello Irked Show. What irks Mike Augello? This is
everything.
This is a new podcast we're going to do weekly. That we just come on here and hear about what irks Mike.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm done.
Let's do this show. I won't be here tomorrow, guys, by the way, because I'm taking my wife to see Springsteen on Broadway tomorrow night. So I know you guys love that concept, but I am going for her birthday. I got tickets, so I'm going. So anyway, I know we all have some comments about that later.
Yeah.
That was going to be my idea for a pre-show. We don't have to talk about that now.
What are you masking? What are you doing?
Yeah, we're masking, and we are masking for sure.
They're vaccinated, so they can go.
We're vaccinated. We're allowed. You have to show your card, right. When you get in, all that stuff. But yeah, we're going to New York. We're staying right around the corner at a nice hotel, which is going to be fun. And just it's going to rain like crazy yet tomorrow. It's going to be raining like nuts in New York City. But yeah, so hopefully everything goes well, and with our luck, it'll be some kind of power outage, and we'll miss the entire show. But we'll see what happens.
Will it be raining peanuts or walnuts?
It'll be raining like crazy. Like something peeing on a flat rock. All right, here we go. All right. Oh, my God. What date is it? Sorry. Oh, wow. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, September 1st, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and I love September because it has hockey in it.
I'm Russ Cohen. If you miss September 1st, you're going to miss the rest of the year, too. Like, it's too easy.
So out of it.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
September morn. And I'm Ekman, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we have reached September.
And we have breaking news.
We have breaking news, but we've reached September, which is first breaking news because I didn't know that till now. But that's exciting because that's the month that the preseason starts. But go ahead, Mike. You go. Continue.
The New York Islanders tweeted 8 minutes ago that they have signed Anthony Beauvillier, Casey Cizikas, Kyle Palmieri, and Ilya Sorokin to multi-year agreements. Now, Elliot Friedman and Renaud Lavoie and Arthur Staple have reported Beauvillier 3 years at $4.15 million and Sorokin 3 years at $4 million. And again, I ask, where does Lou Lamoriello get the pictures to blackmail these players?
All right, so this is what I want to say about this. First off, I want to say that I did have the Beauvillier thing out earlier today. Not that it matters, but it's hard to break something with Lou Lamoriello. But the really interesting thing here, and you're right, Mike. You got now. What is Lou? I just want to know. These are the possibilities of why this is announced today. Okay, Lou has had some other big deal he's working on. He didn't want these things to be mentioned. These numbers to be mentioned because he didn't want any loss in negotiation power. So he kept this secretly behind the scenes until the deal that he was working on for, like, say, a Tarasenko or an Eichel or whatever fell through. That's A. B, that same deal has maybe happened, and we're going to see something from the Islanders later today. Or C, he just wanted to wait till September to screw with everybody. Those are my one things. Those are my three.
He just waited because he had to put all these pieces together. But
I think it's A and D.
I think it's A and D.
D is let's Lou being Lou, and A, I think he sees it as a. You don't want to give up what your strategy is when you're. Yeah.
But right. There's no magic here. I mean, if the Islanders don't win a Stanley Cup within 2 years, they're going to start to have a hard time retaining their talent because everybody's going to have a new contract up in 3 or 4 years, except for Casey Cizikas, and I guess we'll talk about him after.
Well, yeah, I was going to say the other deals have not been confirmed, but Cizikas, the reports are 6 years at $2.5 million, and Palmieri 4 years at $5 million. And what I look at when you look at the Islanders and you look at them on Cap Central, and you see that I think they might be the team with the most $5 million plus contracts. I mean, they got rid of they sent Arizona a draft pick to take Andrew Ladd's contract off their hands. They lost Eberle in the expansion draft, but now you've got Lee, Barzal, Brock Nelson, Pajot, Bailey, and if you believe the reports now, Palmieri all is over $5 million, and then on defense, Pelech and Pulak at $5 million. And Boychuk I don't count because he's retired, and Varlamov I think that's let's see, 1, 2, 3, that's 9 players. That's 9 players over $5 million. That's as daunting as Toronto having 4 years for $40 million. It's very limiting. I mean, I think they're a good team, Kevin, but I don't know. I don't know if they're a great team.
No, they're not a great team. I agree with you on that assessment. But I again, you got to break it down. I've had this conversation before, and I brought it up before. But when you talk to GMs, what they tell you about is, look, everybody has 5 or 6 players that are under $1 million, and then you get down to everybody else, and that averages 17 times 4 point something $million.
Right.
And so 5 million is, close to average. So you just got to, bring a couple others down. I would have thought you would have liked this, because you don't like the concentrating 4 players or 5 players on a lot of money. This kind of spreads it out among a lot of different positions. So what is your model that you like?
My model would probably be a top 4 group at forward and top 3 on defense that you concentrate and your goalie. So I'd say a group of, say, 8 players. I just think they're a little top heavy in terms of the distribution. I mean, okay, I thought they overpaid Eberle at I think he was $5.5 million, and they got out, or I think it was 5 or 5.5. They got out of that with the expansion draft. The Ladd contract was bad from the outset. I think Barzal and Lee are really good players, and they're being paid $7 million. But where I have the problem with is the overpayment of guys. I don't think Brock Nelson is a $6 million player.
No,
I don't think Josh Bailey is a $5 million player. They had to spend $5 million on Pajot because he was a rental, and they needed.
He's turning out to be like a bargain in the whole thing, isn't it?
Actually, he's good value.
And when that deal was signed, we were all kind of like shocked about it. I mean, that's like.
And now Palmieri is. I would have to say he's a good player, but I think he's on the downslope, just starting the downslope of his career. And now if you buy this is 4 years at $5 million. After about 2 years, I don't know whether that's a bargain of a contract. And,
I think that contract's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
$5 million is not outrageous for Palmieri, who's been a consistent scorer.
Yeah.
Zizekas, to me, he could have done better elsewhere.
Well, So Russ and I were talking about this. Russ, the contract that I compared Zizekas to is the Sissons deal with
Right.
The cap hit is reasonable and low, but the term is obscene.
Yeah, he'll never live out that contract.
Well,
he might miss 2 years of that contract. That's what I think.
Yeah, here's the overall view of this, though. Like, we can quibble about each individual player, and we agree a lot of them, but overall, there's nothing here that's outrageous that's going to cost them.
It's not Rick DiPietro 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, is it a little too long for Zizekas? Yeah, probably, but at $2.5 million, what's the big deal? What I mean?
Well, I'll tell you what I think the big deal is, Kev. In 3 years, I don't think the cap will be $10 million higher in 3 years. When they have to pay Barzal, when they're going to have to pay Sorokin, thinking about paying Sorokin again. And if these guys play great, then all of a sudden these other contracts like Nelson and Zizekas and those, if they haven't won a cup, are going to loom large.
Well, but this what GM said to me before, we're not going to see a $10 million player until the cap goes up.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, right now the cap, at 9, like there are people around the league that think that, the Devils and the Blackhawks shouldn't have paid their defenseman $9 million.
Yeah.
Warrant it. So,
well, I mean, the thing is this. I mean, there's lots of ways to look at this, but this is very much what Lou did with New Jersey too, right? So this is not that. I mean, New Jersey didn't have. I mean, they made a couple big signings occasionally, but they also had a lot of players making the same amount of money, kind of. And I think that this is a team sport, and I kind of like this method. Like, to me,
okay, but he had Hall of Famers on that roster. There's no Hall of Famers.
They had Hall of Famers that took less than they had to, too. Like, he'd have.
I know that, but they also were an amazing talents. Like even
they won
Rafalski. Think about what Rafalski would be on this team compared to what he was on the Devils. What I'm basically saying is, when you get these Hall of Fame guys that all take less, then you could have amazing impact. They don't have Hall of Famers.
That's a little bit of hindsight's 2020, Russ, because Rafalski was a great player for sure, but he wasn't like a great player until that team wins Stanley Cups. Like, he was a really good defenseman until they won. I mean, winning Stanley Cups made everybody better, and the idea, and that it made everybody look better on New Jersey, just like it does anywhere.
Remember how Lou sort of held the line in New Jersey. Whenever a player came up for contract and they wanted reasonable to big money, he said sayonara. Peter Sikora wanted big money. He was gone.
And he was right to do that.
Alexander McGillney wanted big money after they won the cup. He was gone.
Yeah.
Scott Niedermayer, who was a Hall of Famer, he said, if you can get better money in Anaheim, go to it. I don't blame you. But okay, at a certain point, they didn't spend money on John Tavares, and Lou was there.
But this is how he believes you keep a team competitive over the long haul. Like this is his method of doing things, because he thinks he wants. He does not believe in going for it, making that big signing.
Even from a standpoint of who would you rather have, John Madden or Josh Bailey? Like, you look at that Devils roster, they were better players.
Oh, I'd rather have Josh Bailey than John Madden. I mean, I love John Madden.
Oh, John Madden.
No, I mean, listen. I mean, I love John Madden. And I really do. I mean, he's one of my favorite players from that team. But I'm not saying that Josh Bailey is the end all be all either. But I'm saying they're close enough. And considering when you consider, I mean, Matt, they were very different players. Hard to compare them.
Yeah, you can't play. I mean, that's what I would bring up. You can't. You'd have to say what you needed that player before.
Right. Exactly.
Because they're two completely different players.
It's ironic that you said what you just said, Eck, because when Lou was in Toronto, and granted, he left the year before Austin Matthews and Marner's contracts came up, but he had an opportunity, and I have to preface this by saying we don't know whether Brendan Shanahan and the organization wanted him to get a guy like William Nylander under contract, but he had the opportunity to get William Nylander locked up on a long-term deal a year before he came up for RFA, and he passed on that. And he said, "Okay, we'll let him earn what he what his keep is going to be by having another year." He had another good year. He left that to Dubas, and Dubas basically ended up succumbing to Nylander and starting Leafs on the road where they got to, and I blame Lou for that. Now if Shanahan said no, don't sign him, and we'll find out what we have to pay for him after his ELC. That's then I absolve him of any responsibility. But that goes counter to everything that Lou has done in his career with the Devils and now with the Islanders. It's curious that he didn't do that with the Leafs.
Well, I think that he didn't perhaps have as much of the all-encompassing power that he has now. I think that at the end of the day, and that's maybe why Lou's not there anymore. I mean, maybe that's why Lou didn't want to be there anymore. The reality is he generally runs everything in every way, down to the concession stands and how he just wants to run every aspect of a team. And I think in Toronto he wasn't able to do that for sure, because they have so many
control, but not all the control.
Yeah, they have so many people that want to have. There's so in Toronto, people are saying, "Well, you got to talk to Shanahan, you got to talk to this guy, you got to talk to that guy." That's not a Lamoriello thing, right? So I moved you down the corner. I moved in the corner just because I didn't like what you were saying. I thought you should be put into the corner, Mike. So that's why I put you down there. Sorry about that.
What were you saying?
Well, I was just going to say, what's the total of these 5 contracts, and what do you think they should be?
With Cizikas, I think the money is right, but the term is bad. With Palmieri, I think he was making 4-1 with the Devils, and I think he's over the age of 30, so I think 5 is a little generous, but he's a UFA. So
he could have gotten a lot more
right on the money. I think 5's right on the money.
He could have gotten more, Mike. He could have gotten more. I'm telling you right now.
I think so too. I think he could have got 5.
I think the Beauvillier deal is. I think Beauvillier got taken to the cleaners. I think he deserved a lot more than 4.1.
But in that 4th year, though, that's when the Islanders are going to be in trouble if he continues this upward arc. That's right. He'll make it back.
I do agree with Russ that if I was running the team now, I would have tried to get everyone in at 3 years, but sometimes you can't do that.
The one thing that they did here is Barzal's contract. He's got 2 more years, and all these contracts extend past that 2 years. So they do have cost certainty, but they don't have a lot of flexibility. And Barzal is making 7 now. I think he's going to make a lot more than 7 based on where his career is going. I think he could be a 100-point player. He could be at least a 90-point player. And that's going to be tough. And I was telling Russ this before. Mayfield his deal's up in 2 years. Next year they would have the ability to sign him to an extension. Pulak is a UFA. So they're going to have to spend
2 years. By year 3, if they haven't won the cup,
right,
they will have to make.
But I think, listen, guys, I think
they will not be able to keep a lot of this talent.
Right. But I think that's his idea. I think that's his thought process. You know, like he's like, if we haven't won the cup by then, we don't want to keep this talent, because then this group is no longer, this group had its shot. Like he sees this as a group of having its shot. Right. And I think what Kevin asked is exactly
But the other
right.
thing is that they've also tailored it to Trotz too. So
That's
that
what I'm going to
means
say. Yeah, Russ, let me finish that thought.
that's the other issue. You're now putting blind faith in guys like Clutterbuck. And
because what Kevin said, what Kevin asked Mike was, for these contracts as a combined total, do you think this is fair? And that's how he's looking at this. Like that's how you're looking at this, because that's how Lou looks at everything. This is a team deal. So he's making this is a team signing of a bunch of players, and he's looking at this. These guys are, this is what, you know, we need to pay to get all of our players in, to make it by not having a, listen, when a guy signs a $9 million contract, that puts pressure on him to be the top scorer. When you play in, you know, Barry Trotz's system, like Russ, you're saying, you might not be able to put up those kind of numbers that going to justify the $9 million, but you can still be a great player. You can still help you win a Stanley Cup, even if you're not putting up, you know, 90 points, you're putting up 70 points, but you're in a Barry Trotz system. So like this. What I like about this, and what I love about the way Lamoriello does things, is this is not a superstar-driven sport. This is a team sport. Teams win. You know, there's no question about it. Superstars help, but teams win. Mm-hmm. And you know, you cannot do it without depth. You know, the fourth line of the Lightning this year, perfect example, right? That's like that. You need that, and you have to pay everybody to get that on board. And what Lou does really well, and what Barry Trotz does really well, is so in sync in working on this like team concept. Where no one's getting paid a whole lot more than that. You're getting $1 million more than me. I'm getting $2 million less than you. But but this is not like I'm a $750,000 player. You're a $9 million player type.
Yeah, but there are other factors here when it comes to the distribution of money.
Of course,
like in Tampa and now in Florida and a few other states, Kucherov would not be a $9.5 million player. Neither would Braden Point, but they take that because the Florida Tech situation, they're actually probably $11 million players, and Tampa Bay gets the benefit of paying them less because they get more of that money after taxes.
But you're right. But and every time a player signs somewhere, it is a holistic thing, right? There's a whole aspect to it. Holistic's not the right word to use, but it's a whole thing. And you know, to me, you know, those guys get a tax break here. You know, Palmieri, who I think could have gotten $6 million other places if he really wanted to. If he wanted to go to like some place like, you know, more obscure, knows that he can stay living where he's been living. And he can play for a team that has a chance to win a Stanley Cup. So why would you take another $1 million a year to do it? This is how Lou gets it done, right? This is how he makes it happen. Now, the interesting thing that people are saying in the chat room, which I think is very true, is we still don't have a Parise deal. We still don't have a Sajak deal, right? Those guys are.
He can live without either one of those guys, though.
What's up?
They could live without those guys.
They could, but don't you think those guys would have signed someplace else if they weren't?
Both of those guys are veteran minimum guys. I bet even
800,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but I think that I do think that the fact that we haven't heard a single Parise rumor anywhere else, I don't think he's definitely fallen off. But is he fallen off to the point where we shouldn't hear it? Where he's a tryout guy? I don't think Parise is a tryout guy yet, right?
He's not a tryout guy. He'll get a
one-way deal.
So was he just waiting to see what happened in New Jersey? I don't think so. I mean, I think he would have done something by now.
No,
I think he'll sign it. That's it.
Yeah,
one thing that's lost on this, what I think is important to point out, I just added it up because I thought this was the case. Lou has $20 million coming off the salary cap next year, and Palak and Dobson are the two guys that he's got to sign. Because you can say goodbye to Clutterbuck. You can say bye to Komarov. You can say goodbye to the couple other guys there. So he'll have some new.
That year he will, but what about when we're talking about Sorokin and Barzal at the same time? That could break the bank.
Well, a lot will depend on what happens to Varlamov.
By that point, you see whether or not this team makes it or not. And if this team doesn't do it, then Lou can let those people go.
By that time, Lou will be drinking Mai Tais in Bermuda. It's sort of like the Ken Holland situation in Edmonton. People were saying, "Oh my God, you gave Zach Hyman 7 years." What do you think? Ken Holland's going to be retired by the time that chicken comes home to roost.
Maybe. I mean, guys are staying. Ken Holland will be younger than Lou Lamoriello is now. And if anybody could be a GM when they're 80, don't you think it's Lou?
Yeah.
Yes.
No question.
Yes.
I mean, he doesn't. I mean, I think he's still making really smart decisions, and it is interesting to me that he is doing it though in an old school way of like we are a team, and that's what we're going to be. And I like that concept. It's what made New Jersey so good for so many years, and it's what's making the Islanders into that same kind of team.
And I just because somebody in the chat was saying why Canadian teams get shafted with taxes. I have discovered this. This is one of the reasons why the Leafs and some other Canadian teams are heavy in signing bonuses because, like, say, for example, Austin Matthews, he lives in Arizona. He gets paid the signing bonus on July 1st. At that point, he's living in Arizona. The taxes in Arizona are less than the taxes in Canada. So when he gets the signing bonus, it's earnings where he's living. So it's the benefit of avoiding the Canadian taxes on that $12 million signing bonus. So that's how they sort of finagle around. But for Canadian-based players, guys like Mitch Marner, they're going to get taken to the cleaners I'm not crying because they're getting millions of dollars, but it is a factor. And that's why these players are going to Florida, going to Arizona, going to Nevada, Tennessee, because those are all no tax states.
Right. But Hyman's a perfect example of a player I don't think Lou would have lost. Like I think Lou would have found a way to keep Zach Hyman in Toronto. I really do. I don't know how he would have done it, but I think he would have found a way. Whether it would have been him talking to Hyman and saying, "Listen, here's the deal."
Well, if Lou, say for example, if Lou had stayed in Toronto and gotten Matthews and Marner and Nylander under more economical deals, then they would have been able to sign Hyman. And that's not a criticism of Dubas. Dubas paid market rate for star players, but you had to be able to shave $1 million or $1.5 million off those deals to have the operating flexibility to sign players who are key players down the line. And he didn't do that. And that's why instead of re-signing Zach Hyman, they probably have Michael Bunting playing on the top line.
But I think the problem with that thinking is you're thinking that Hyman would have taken less for Lou, and he wouldn't. This is the one contract Hyman needed to get paid. He's going to get market value no matter what.
He may have. I'm not convinced he doesn't take a little bit less, Russ, just because. What makes the Lou-led? Hold on. What makes the Lou-led Leafs any better than the Leafs now? What makes him like them better then than now? I don't think anything.
He wouldn't have signed John Tavares. That's what.
No, he would have. But I think he. No, I mean, just based on the fact he always got guys like Elias to stay. And he always got guys like, he finds ways to get these guys to stay.
He never would have spent $11 million, 7 years, $77 million on John Tavares as a free agent. He never would have signed him in Toronto. Toronto would have been in on it, but they never would have spent that money. And he probably would have gone to San Jose or re-signed with the Islanders. It never would have happened.
I don't know, because we don't know how much.
I disagree with Russ too. Historically, for as long as he's been a GM, he's gotten players to do things that are surprising. And he's a very persuasive guy, and everybody who's ever played for him says the same thing. He's
but
very
not all players, Kev. Like we pointed out, Niedermeyer.
There's some guys who don't.
Niedermeyer loves.
Niedermeyer's situation.
Yeah, he swears by him. Because Lou said, "Look, if you need to." Same thing with Parise. Like he dreaded his phone call with Lamoriello. And when he got Lou on the phone, he goes, "I understand completely. You had to go. It's more money. Sometimes, you got to do that. But sometimes, because of Lou is Lou, he convinces guys, and guys just say, I just can't leave Lou. I like Lou." So
and Kevin's right. I mean, you can talk about the Niedermeyer situation in a lot of different ways, but we had Niedermeyer on. Remember, we had him on here. And we talked to him a little bit about it. And honestly, the situation was, sure, Niedermeyer was up for a raise, and sure, Lou doesn't like to pay guys more. But that's not. But the way Lou had that meeting was like, listen, I understand you probably want to go play with your brother. Got a chance to win a Stanley Cup there with him, and so that's what Scott took out of that meeting. Not that Lou wasn't going to pony up, and the reason he takes that out of that meeting is because of the trust that was built up over many, many years of those guys talking to each other. And Lou talks to everybody. That's one of the big differences. I mean,
but I want you to show me the stat where a guy had his one last payday and he took less to stay with Lou rather than hitting the market. That's what I want to see, because that's what we're talking about with Hyman.
Yeah, but you just don't know. I mean, that's the deal. I mean, I don't know whether he could have but you don't either. He just has this way, and you don't know. You don't know. Everybody's relationship is different.
I think Elias is the best example, because I know a couple times he came up for deals that I thought he was going to be able to get a lot more money from, and he stayed in New Jersey for that.
How about Brodeur?
Brodeur is a great example.
Brodeur took under market value.
You can't tell me that Brodeur couldn't have gotten way more money other places, but he's.
Oh my God.
I mean, he definitely.
I think he was making 5 or 6 or something like that, and like other goaltenders were making more than that.
But don't you love a team that you can go to that has players that are making this call that they're staying there for less money because they want to keep the group together? I mean, isn't that the kind of team you want to get behind? I mean, that to me is when those guys show up for work, isn't that a great situation?
Yeah, I mean that is good when you can, when it works out, and although Mike's point is really a significant one. It's easier to do that in Tampa Bay than it is in other places because.
Sure.
And I don't know how much. I mean, okay, Lou is able to pull it off, but okay, let's use Colorado as an example. Okay, McKinnon signed that big deal, that deal that's widely acclaimed as being the best bang for the buck deal in the NHL. He signed that after a bad year.
Right.
He's got another 2 years. He's going to be probably a $10 million player. They're playing Makar over 9. They're paying Rantanen over 9. Landeskog is making close to 8.
Yeah.
Nobody on that team. I mean, maybe Landeskog did because they spread out the deal over 8 years. Nobody on that team is taking a hometown discount. They're all getting paid.
And how many cups do they have?
Right, but what I'm saying is, other than the teams like the Islanders with Lou holding the line, all these teams, the Stars, those players are getting paid. Nobody's taking less. Seth Jones, gets $9 million. Werenski gets $9 million from Columbus. I mean,
and there is going to be a point where Lou needs to win another cup.
No, he does.
Say that forever. We said that with Glenn Sader.
No, you're right about that.
Glenn Sader went 20 years more than 20 years now without another cup.
Right. No, you're right. But as Kevin said, it's easier to do that in Tampa. But I would also argue that he did it in one of the hardest places to get players to play, which was New Jersey. New Jersey was not a fancy place for players to stay.
No, that's true.
The one thing I think it's sort of pointed out, oftentimes when you have these discussions with players, there's a line that you always say that just grates on everybody is it's just business.
Yeah.
And Lou is one of the few guys who can actually say that, and he has such a relationship with his players that they know he's actually being truthful. That, and he cares enough about him to say, go ahead and play with your brother. I'll be rooting for you. And they know he means it. Like he likes these guys. Now, he can't convince everybody to do it, but he convinces enough of them that it sort of makes a difference. And, that's the value of a GM that, has he's always cast as a curmudgeon and so forth, but his relationship with his players is usually quite good.
He is. I know you know this, Kevin, but he is. I mean, for the couple times I've gotten to talk to him individually, like one of the scariest / sweetest people you'll ever meet. Like he goes back and forth between being like the nicest sweetheart of a guy who is like you get the feeling like he's just warm and like his warm and fuzzy thing from him, and then there are looks you'll get sometimes when you ask him something that make you want to crawl back into your skin.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people think more of his reputation. Like I've never really seen him in a hostile interview with.
No, but I've seen that.
No, not an interview, not hostile. But you know what, Kev? I think what X point now too was when they were filming Lou at one point, and they were like in his office, like he was just like, "No, you can't come in here."
Yeah.
He, all of a sudden, he just clammed up.
You talk to people who work for him and work with him, and they'll tell you a lot. I mean, and the one time I saw that death stare. I think you were there, Kevin, when this question was asked. It was something. Oh, so we were interviewing Lombardi. I think it was Lombardi, or who was, I forget. Anyway, Dean Lombardi was very much. Lou kind of brought him. Lou taught him a lot of stuff. Right. He was one of his mentor guys, right? And I forget if it was Lou. I think it was Lou who was asked this question. I do think it was. I'm trying to remember why. Oh, it was when New Jersey was in this. No, where was it? Anyway, forget about it. We were asking Lou a question, and someone asked about Dean Lombardi. It might have been when the Kings were in the Stanley Cup Finals, a media day, I think, for some reason. They asked Dean Lombardi. So, you've been getting a lot of Lou, or hear that Lou's been your guy or whatever. And I'm sorry, I'm messing this up, but I think it was Lou that was asked the question, because when they said, we understand that you took Lombardi under your wing and showed him a lot of things. And Lou looked at him Lou looked back saying that no one was ever supposed to know that look. That was the freakiest thing I've ever seen. It was like one of these okay, maybe maybe Lombardi wasn't supposed to tell people about that. Like that, that don't tell. I mean, you hear everybody from Elliot Friedman to, I've heard you, Kevin, say, the whole thing of that, and I've heard it too, that Lou won't make a deal if someone talks about it or whatever. There's this whole.
Yeah. He asked you not to to talk about it, and no one wants to violate that.
Well, I like I said, the quintessential Lou thing, and then we'll move on because there's a few other things to talk about.
Yeah.
The quintessential Lou thing with me was the opening of training camp, and I think it was 2015, or with the first year he was general manager with the Leafs when he made the Michael Grabner deal. Nobody heard a peep out of it, and all of a sudden a press release was passed out in the scrum of we were interviewing some of the players that had been traded, and like 5 minutes after we interviewed them, they were Carter Verhaeghe and all these guys. It was a 5-for-1 deal, and nobody heard a peep about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really true. I have something I want to get into, Mike.
Well, can I just give the Kotkaniemi update here?
Go ahead.
The Kotkaniemi update, according to former hockey buzzer Eric Engels, who writes for Sportsnet.
Yep.
He was interviewed on a Toronto radio station this morning. He said, right now, I think the most likely scenario is that the Canadiens are going to let Kotkaniemi walk and replace him via trade. And like we mentioned with Elliot Friedman talking about it, the target would be Christian Dvorak. They probably are going to have to trade more than a 1 and a 3 for Dvorak.
Sure.
But that seems to be where they're going.
Yeah, and that's that. I do want to talk about that because I wasn't here a little bit. I do want to talk about that situation in a second as well.
Yeah.
And to get that, and I want to talk about Eichel for a second too. So,
let's do Kotkaniemi first.
What was that?
Let's do Kotkaniemi first.
Let's do that first. All right. Yeah, because like I texted you guys that this seemed, first of all, one thing that people tend to forget about these offer sheets, and I know you guys probably talked about this, so I'll make it quick, but is that, this is not like a predatory thing. This is not like a team can go and just sign a guy to an offer sheet. He has to agree to go there. He has to agree that he's willing to go there, right? So Kotkaniemi saying he's willing to sign a 1-year deal in Carolina is really astonishing.
But there is, and we saw some reporting on this when the offer sheet was first made, and there's been further reporting about this, that Larry Brooks referenced it on Twitter this morning, that the rumor out there is that there is a multi-year deal on the table for Kotkaniemi that he would be eligible to sign after January 1st. That they've already agreed.
I think that's true, and I think that's got to be true. Right?
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
He thinks that's cap circumvent, or he thinks that's some sort of circumvention. There's no rule against that.
I think cap circumvention has gone out the window, guys. I think that whole concept that we used to have of cap circumvention, I think people are no longer paying attention to it at the NHL, in my opinion. I mean, this used to be a problem, but not anymore. It seems like, I don't know. But anyway, let me finish my thought on that. So
go ahead.
Yeah. So, we can all talk about the dueling statements, the great statement like that Waddell puts out that mirrors exactly the statement that Montreal put out. The $20 signing bonus, things like that. It really feels as if Kotkaniemi's had it with Montreal, and I think Montreal knows that. I really do, because I think that at the end of the day, I think he should have had it with Montreal. And how the old argument, I texted you guys, but I think this is true, that you can't argue with success because Montreal had success this year. I think you can argue with success in Montreal. I really do, because I think that they got lucky. And I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan. They got lucky to get past Toronto, winning, Game 5 in overtime. Forget about what it, but they got lucky, and because of that, they got on a run, and then they played some great hockey, but they also mismanaged stuff all over the place. They got lucky in a way that Luke Richardson coached them for a time being, in a series that they needed him to coach them. This is a team that really had success in the strangest way, and if I'm Kotkaniemi, I want the hell out of there too. I'll be honest, because the way they've forced him to come up really. I mean, he wants to play. Everyone wants to play early, but we know he got rushed. The way he was handled this year in the playoffs, when he played, I mean, he was a force at times, and then he would be taken out. He'd be put back in. I mean, if I'm him, I'm like, I'm done too. I'm really done. I mean, he's friends with Aho. He's got to get out of there.
The only reason he got into the Toronto series is because Jake Evans got hurt. I know. And then he gets bent, and then he gets benched again. I know, and he scores. He puts up goals. I mean, this is insane that Montreal doesn't play Caulfield in the beginning of the Toronto series. Like, what's the point of that? I mean, there's certain things that yet, despite all that, they win. So you can't argue with success, right? Well, this is an example of I'm as a Montreal guy who grew up a Montreal fan, but like we were talking about earlier, fans.
I completely argue with their success, and I think it's going to kill them. I think they have gotten too big for their britches, and now I think they're going to let Kotkaniemi go because they can't justify this because they acted like they didn't think this player was worth it in the first place. So in my opinion, a first and third round draft pick for somebody you were benching in the playoffs, I'll take that every day of the week. So why wouldn't they? In their mind, we think Kotkaniemi is better than that, and we think he's a center that they need. But why wouldn't they let him walk?
It's all. I agree with your assessment that it's all academic in terms of whether they, what it's going to cost them to get a replacement. And we were looking at the Montreal depth chart, and if they are not able to trade for Christian Dvorak, then right now their number 2 center is Jake Evans. And then you're not a playoff team with Jake Evans even being your third line center, let alone your second. So it's the ability of Bergevin to replace Kotkaniemi, which I think is the factor here in them matching or not matching the offer sheet. Because honestly, if they match it, I don't know if they're a playoff team. I don't think they're making the. I think that they're.
This is a player that's a fringe player for them right now, so it doesn't really. He's a fringe guy.
He's a fringe player, but they're treating him like
he shouldn't be a fringe player, but he's anybody you're scratching in the playoff. Kevin, do you agree with that at all?
Well, no, because he's still considered young and still, still has potential. Like you could scratch a guy but still believe in him and, moving forward. So, I guess the question comes down to, I think the Carolina Hurricanes have more faith that he's going to have a breakthrough season than Montreal does.
Right.
And
I agree.
They wanted him. They tried to get him. They're keen on this player, and they saw an opportunity to exact some revenge, and they had some fun with it, and they did that.
What do you think of that? What do you think of that, Kevin? The whole thing,
I'm fine with it because they really did want the player. Yeah, like it would be sophomoric if they did this and they really were just kind of but this was a guy they wanted. They targeted. There's apparently some connection there between him and the Finns and the other players on that team. And they see this as the type of guy they wanted, and their scouts have said good things about him. And I think Montreal's going to take the compensation, and I think it's going to hurt them.
It's going to be interesting, and that's going to have to be something that they're going to have to be judged against. I mean, they're going to have to look at that now because they're not in the playoffs anymore. They're not a big playoff run. They're a team now.
Yeah, I think this, if your goal was to punish Marc Bergevin, as I wrote in my column, well, you've done an excellent job because he now, he's always under the microscope, but now it's worse. Like, he takes the compensation. It's, what did he turn that into? If Kotkaniemi ends up being a great player, he'll take abuse for that. Yeah. If they don't get a number 2 center, he'll take abuse for that. Like,
This is really throwing the pressure on him.
How about the timing on this too? You wait till the very end when there's nothing available out there. There's no free agents. Nobody's got any centers they want to part with, except for Arizona, and the cost of that would be too. You look at Dvorak's consistency, and it's been quite good. He's not a great scorer, but he's a good scorer, and he's consistent. So and he's two-way guy. So now, I think that's more than a 1 1/3, particularly when, if you're projecting Carolina, you're thinking 22 to 32, somewhere in that range.
Not the greatest first-round pick. I agree. Now moving to Eichel, because that's a little bit more fresh. Now, I got a report yesterday from somebody that I really trust. It said Eichel's about to get surgery, and I couldn't get any kind of concept as to what surgery that was. Is he going to get his surgery? Well, and they wouldn't say anything. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, this is the thing. The report that I think you had said that December would be the
return.
Now that's consistent with the fusion surgery, not with the disc replacement, because the disc replacement was supposedly a 6-week recovery and the fusion was 3 months. But what that means to me is that Eichel and his camp caved because he didn't want to have the fusion surgery. So if that's what, is this something, and I think you insinuated this in your article, is this something where, okay, if you get a different agent,
let me paint that conspiracy. I'll paint the conspiracy theory. This is just the conspiracy theory. Okay. But last week, but there's some sense to this. I can't imagine the result of this is Eichel getting the fusion surgery based on the logic behind what's happened here. Because last week, the NHL, NHLPA, Eichel, and
Peter Fish,
and all meet, and they meet to discuss this. And basically, what's that meeting got to be about? Think about it. And really, why does the NHL and the NHLPA get involved in this, except for discussing this whole aspect of the surgery, right? The legal, CBA ramifications of this. What are, because we've said before, they can't make him get surgery, but they can determine what kind of surgery he gets, which I think is unconstitutional in every which way. I think is
collectively bargained.
I get that, but I still think that even though something collectively bargained doesn't mean you can't challenge it in court as being a
sure. But how long is that going to take? It might take him a year,
and that takes a while. So granted, that's all part of the scenario here.
But what came out of this meeting between Adams and the Sabres, Peter Fish, the NHL and the NHLPA, and Eichel was absolutely nothing. And the only thing that came out of it afterward was Pat Brisson got hired and replaced.
I don't buy that nothing came out of that meeting. Okay, this is my feeling on that, because first of all, the fact that Brisson is suddenly the agent tells me something, right? I'm not going to sit there and say that Eichel caved by that, because first of all, I mean, there's a lot of advantages to Pat Brisson, right? And right now, he's not negotiating a contract for Eichel. He's trying to get Eichel traded, right? He's trying to negotiate a deal, and many agents negotiate trades. That's all happens all the time. We've seen it before, and it's a really good. And Brisson is one of the best. I mean, Brisson could be a GM in this league, and really a really good GM, no questions asked. He would be an incredible GM in the NHL. So you bring him on to help expedite a deal, right? And that's and the Sabres prefer working with him. So the Sabres are okay. So the Sabres, Brisson, he represented guys like Briere and Drury in the past, and he's had different, he's been involved. So they bring him. So him bringing the result of the agent being fired, I think, is something that came out of that meeting. And I think in that meeting, let's say, for a second, that Eichel says, okay, I'll bring on Brisson to help make this deal, but I'm getting the surgery that I want to get. That feels to me like a fair trade, because now suddenly you're helping the Sabres make this deal, but you're also giving Eichel what he wants, which is and not legally, and not having to go down the whole legal challenge thing of you can't determine what kind of surgery I get. If my doctor says I should get one kind of surgery, I should be able to get that surgery, because there's no other union on the planet like the Steelworkers Union. Imagine if they determined what surgery you get. I mean, this is an insane concept. Okay. If your doctor says you should get one thing, you should get that thing, and no one should be able to tell you can't. That's
okay. I've heard this argument before, and the thing is, if it's purely an insurance issue, which I believe it is, I haven't heard anything to the contrary, and he decides I want to get the disc replacement surgery instead of the fusion, then the Sabres have the right to terminate his contract, because he's doing something they believe and they are told by the CBA that they have control over. They're responsible for the $50 million. Under that contract to pay to him.
Right.
If he can't play, they're still on the hook for it.
Right. So the reality is, if they terminate his contract, what does that mean?
That means he goes anywhere he wants and they get nothing for him.
Right, they get nothing for him. So they're not doing that. They're not doing that. There's no way they terminate his contract. That doesn't benefit anybody, right? And it benefits Eichel perhaps, but it's a little risky, because if Eichel gets the surgery and he's not good, there's still risk there for Eichel, because he's throwing away $50 million potentially. But I think he's obviously confident enough to get the surgery just to move on to keep being a hockey player. Like you can talk about money all you want, but he believes this is good. So to me, the only surgery he could be getting here is the kind he really wants. Now they say December, and you're right. I mean, they say the disc, but how I really heard it was he'll be back December by the latest. That's so to me, that could mean they're just being conservative with the surgery. That could mean that that's what they're going to tell teams when they're making the trade, so they don't overpromise, underfulfill, that kind of thing. But that's the scenario that's playing out here. And when we hear that Eichel's getting the surgery in the next couple days, which I really think we will, I don't know what, I still don't know what surgery is going to be. But Kevin, can you see the scenario at all that I'm painting being possible?
Yes, I do. Because even though Mike's right about terminating the contract, and just as you pointed out, they don't want to terminate the contract, because they need something for this. So, he may have just said, look, I want to do this, and I want to do it kind of my way. And they're going to say, well, you're going to have to pay for it. And, he gets $10 million a year. He can pay for surgery if he wants.
Right.
So, I mean, I think all that's possible. I don't have any insight on that. Brisson coming in is a good thing just because of his mediation skills.
Right.
He has the ability to mediate things, to get everyone. He has relationships with people, and so I think he'll be able to make this kind of all come together. He's just, he's a good talker, and there are other guys who can do it as well. He's just one of the best at it. So
he's one of the best.
So I mean, this is, getting him to have the surgery, I've said all along, is the best for all involved.
Yeah.
So and I don't know. I would think they should want him to have the surgery where he's back sooner. And I get that it's not everyone will do it, but I remember Steve Yzerman. It's funny that it never came up with Steve Yzerman when he had a surgery that, I remember the doctor's quote to me when I interviewed him was, I give this surgery, I do it for elderly people who want to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I don't do it.
It was when he had that hip surgery, right?
Well, no, it was his knee surgery. They and they do it in, and it was, he had never done it on an elite athlete, and the revenues were fine to do it. Everybody was fine, and everything else. Now, Yzerman was that later in his career and not earlier in his career. That's the big difference. So
sure.
But
do you agree that there's really shady constitutionality to this, Kevin?
It is, and I also know you can't bargain away your basic rights. Right. Just because you sign, you can't sign a document that says I'm going to be a slave.
Right.
Even though you sign a contract to do that, there are rules against that. So, I don't get it. I don't understand how you can ever be in a position when your employer can tell you what surgery you can and can't have.
Yeah.
That makes no sense to me in terms of just basic human rights.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's why this meeting happened, because it's for the NHL and the NHLPA to be involved, that had to be what was going on. They had to be discussing this.
I think the PA wants to avoid any legal challenge to they want some control over what the player is doing medically, because they're on the hook.
Yeah, but if you have a doctor who tells you that that's what you need to do,
this is all elective in the case of Eichel. We know that the fusion surgery works. There have been other athletes that have had it done. It works. His main complaint is because I guess the disc replacement would preserve the range of motion that he would have in his neck, and the fusion may not do it. That the team and the league are probably determining that's not enough of a factor to prevent him from having that surgery.
Well, anybody who's ever had a stiff neck can argue against that.
Yep.
I mean,
I can.
I have 2 discs in my back that are bad. I've done rehabilitation forever. I've had doctors tell me all the time to do the fusion thing, and I refuse to do it. I won't do it because I don't want. I know people who've done it, and it's I want to be able to have mobility, and I want.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it either.
I'll take having to exercise a little bit more to not have to do it. It's kind of. So no, I'm not an athlete. We
really need 4 lawyers discussing us, and not us.
Right.
Well, I did talk to a couple of lawyers about it. About it because I was really thinking about that. And
Celino and Barnes.
Yeah, it really seems like Kevin, what you said is the best thing I've heard so far. That you can't negotiate away your basic human rights, and I think the right to your own health decisions, or your own decisions on what you do with your own body, is a basic human right. I think that's the end of the day. That's really as basic as it comes, right? So, yeah, this is insane. So I think we'll see how it plays out here. But now, the other thing that last thing on Eichel, then we'll get to go. But the last thing on Eichel is this: the second Brisson was hired, I started hearing Ranger rumors again. All right, and I thought that was interesting. Suddenly the Rangers were out of this. The Rangers were not going to talk about Eichel. The Rangers were going to go. And second Brisson comes in, I start hearing Rangers rumors again. I know Drury has a good relationship with Brisson. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But, I think that it is interesting that maybe the Rangers could be back in on this. I don't know. But
I don't think they've ever been out of it.
Yeah.
They've got the pieces that could make it work.
Yeah.
As we've discussed. I mean, I know that the other chatter was Montreal, because Bergevin and Brisson have a relationship, a really close relationship. I don't know. I don't know if Montreal has the pieces to make
extremely close, Mike, to the point where I was told years ago that Brisson was offered the GM job in Montreal I was told this by a player who was represented by Brisson, so I really do believe this is the case because he was represented at the time, and Brisson turned it down and recommended Bergevin to be the GM. So that's that situation. Like Brisson and Bergevin are very, very tight.
I don't, and maybe I'm wrong, but if it's the best package, then maybe they would reconsider. I don't think the Sabres are willing to trade Eichel inside their own division.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
So
they definitely don't want
not Montreal.
They don't want to.
I think they will if
the package is.
It's a package is there.
Yeah.
But Montreal, I don't think even has that package. I don't think Montreal has the players to put that together.
Cole Caulfield is included in the deal.
Yeah, they're not trading.
Yeah, they have players.
Well, Caulfield for sure, but that's
they're not trading Caulfield.
No, they're not trading.
It won't get done if they insist on Caulfield.
He's the only guy that I think. I think the Alex Tuck thing in Buffalo. Like I was talking to you yesterday on the phone, Mike, about this. Like Alex Tuck being from up there.
I think he's from Syracuse. He trains.
That makes a friggin' ton of sense to me. He's a great player for the Sabres to get in this deal for sure. I mean, he's just a piece for sure.
It would have to be more than that.
But he's a great piece to start with.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got to go. But it was really fun, guys. Thank you as always. We'll be back again. I won't be back tomorrow, but we'll see where we're going to. We'll find out. Stay tuned about whether there's a show tomorrow or not, but we'll be back on Friday for sure.
A Springsteen show or our show?
Well, there will be a Springsteen show tomorrow night, yes, and I will be enjoying that fully. More than I would enjoy a Billy Joel concert for sure.
Our show will be better, and so will Billy Joel.
Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Don't listen to those guys. I don't know what they're talking about. We'll talk to you soon.